This there's a series of sessions that we're doing on options trading, and this is number one in the series. It's atypical from what we've been doing in the past because my goal is to have 3 or 4 shows focused on options trading. That way, if you want to go back through it or relearn, we can go through that. So that's going to be the focus of our show today, and we might do a little bit of end of discussions as we usually do at Tesla Fan Insight. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on the channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We could use some help on Patreon if you would. And I also would like to encourage you to at least watch 6 or 8 seconds of our ads because it helps us meet the bill obligations related to getting the channel to work. So Tesla, there's a whole field called options trading. And what's interesting about it is that there are a lot of people who make a lot of money at it, particularly if you know what you're doing. I wanted to blend options trading and Tesla because if you look at the chart of Tesla stock over the last year and a half, I wanted to note that there are certain stocks that are horrible for options trading because they don't move very much. There are other stocks that move a great deal. Excellent stocks to trade options on because you can make a lot of money that way. So I've been going back and forth on how to teach this class, and my strategy, I think, then is to go to maybe a 4 or 5 class session, have you guys ask questions through, and then I can go from there to help you all understand the process of how to make money off of your knowledge of Tesla. Help you all understand the process of how to make money off of your knowledge of Tesla. So for my first hardcore class, I wanted to generally introduce the concept of how options work. And you might be surprised that you've actually been trading options without realizing it. So there's a deal that happened near my home, and I used to live in California right next to the San Francisco airport. So what happened is there's this thing called a racetrack that's, I want to say it's Bay Meadows, right next to the airport. Bay Meadows had an interesting situation. There's a freeway right next to right next to the track called 101. And Bay Meadows had 100 acres of land that they wanted to sell. And the location was really interesting because anytime you're next to a freeway, it's a great location because people can see the land. It's awesome because people in the community aren't going to bitch about traffic because the traffic was on the freeway anyway, and whether or not it goes into that lot, who cares, because it doesn't affect people driving through my neighborhood. So it tends to have a lower against it community thing. So what happened in the case of this deal is that Bay Meadows decided to sell 100 acres of land next to the 101 freeway in a place called San Mateo, California. What ended up happening was that the deal that was struck was for the land to, the price of the land to be $25 million. So what ended up happening was that the people buying the land talked with Bay Meadows, and it was agreed that because it would take as long as 5 years to get permission to build on that land, that they didn't have to pay all the money immediately. They put down about $1 million, and then they spent $1 million or $2 million in legal fees to work on getting that land cleared to build on. What ended up happening, and why I'm bringing up this deal, is something very strange, interesting occurred. What happened is they got some of the best lawyers in the area working on their transaction. And what ended up happening is that those lawyers were able to get permission to build within 1 year of when they started off this transaction. So once they cleared the right to build on that property, they now had a piece of property that they still had 4 years to go before they had to spend, pay $25 million, or in this case, $24 million, because they put $1 million down. And it was now ready to be built on. A developer came to them and gave them $100 million for the property. So to review, they put up $1 million to control this land. In 1 year, maybe it was $1 million in legal fees and other things, they got permission to build on this 100 acres. Once they got permission to build on this 100 acres, the value of the acreage went from theoretically $25 million to $100 million in under a year. And so why I'm bringing this up is this is a classic example of how options work. So they control that land for a certain period of time, and they didn't have to spend the money. They didn't have to put up the full $25 million. So what ended up happening is that they sold the land to the developer, gave $24 million extra to Bay Meadows, and their profit in 1 year was $75 million after they put down $1 million plus their legal fees to get the clearance on that property. So I bring this up to you because one of the things that, another way to put this is that when you buy a house, let's say you have a $100,000 house, you put down, let's say 5% or $5K in earnest money, and then you have between 90 and maybe 120 days to get a loan to buy that property. Now, what's interesting about it is, let's introduce some possibilities of what could happen to that house. Number one, what if they found a giant gold mine underneath that nobody knew about previously? Guess what? The value of the house would rise dramatically, but when you've agreed with $5,000 down to only pay $100K, you could make a killing off of that thing even before you took full possession of it. Let's do the flip option. What happens if you put your $5,000 down on your $100,000 house and they find out there's a toxic waste dump underneath and everybody's going to die? Guess what? You're out your $5,000, but you don't have to buy this house because you controlled it with $5,000, but you don't have to buy it. So this is another example of the fact that for those of you who've purchased a home, when you put that money down and you hadn't got the loan squared yet on the house, you actually did what's called a call option on that house, which is you had an option to buy the house for 90 days, and that cost you $5,000. Now let me play around with what happened here. For 90 days to get your loan done, you put $5,000 down. What if you requested 1 year to get your loan done? Guess what? For that extra time, beyond the 90 days that's typical, the owner of that property could say, hey, 90 days is $5,000. So if you want a year, which is 4 times 90 days, your theoretical down could be 4 times 5 or $20,000. So bottom line is that if you want extra time on your option, you have to pay more. And the way you, and it doesn't mean that you own the property still, you're just controlling it. So for our first lesson, I want you guys to listen to what I just said, which is good, but go backwards and listen to it again, because I ran through quickly and you may have questions that I can answer about what I've said. Now, let's do a quick switch over here and discuss what an option is. When you do an equity option, when you buy one option, what that means is you have the right to buy 100 shares at a certain price. So when you put up that money, you actually don't own the shares of that stock. You have the right to own it. Just like with a house, when you put that $5,000 option down, you don't own the house yet. You own the right to purchase the house at a certain price. Same idea. So I'm blending the real estate and the stock here so you can more clearly understand it, because most, if not many of you, have actually purchased homes. And what you didn't realize was you were trading options when you purchased that home without putting the cash up initially. So what I want to do, so bottom line is that I just wanted to introduce what is an option, how do they work. An option on a house, we can switch it out and say, let's do options on a stock. Now, for the latter part of lesson number 1, let's jump over to Tesla. One of the problems with trading options is you need a stock that moves somewhat in order to really make great money. So if you're not doing insider trading or other illegal things, all we have to do is look at what's going on with Tesla. One of the reasons why I wanted to aggressively get through multiple classes over the next couple of days is that we're within a 2-week period of when Tesla announced earnings. Why this is big is what I will refer you to as process A. So the third part of process A is after an earnings announcement, the first part is the hedge funds move the stock wherever it's going to go up or down. The second part is that there'll actually be analysts who write a report, and if that report is good, it gives large hedge fund or money managers and hedge fund managers of all types, and even individuals, a green light to go buy the stock. So we saw that the stock was up $7 yesterday, and which is October 31st, and only one of the analyst firms has publicly come out and upgraded it to a strong buy. And this suggests to them that Tesla's in a good position and it's a good time to buy it. So so today I was trying not to cover too much, but be able to sort of break this into pieces that everyone is viewing. So what I'm going to cover finally is your homework for the day, and then I'm going to review the emails that people have sent and what I'd like to ask you guys to do in terms of work-wise. So the homework for today is you're being given $20,000. What your homework is that there's an option that's called, the stock is at $337 currently. What I want you to do is on a play basis on paper, I want you to buy $10,000 of the 340 November 16th call options. I want you to buy $10,000 worth, and I want you to buy $10,000 worth of the November 335 calls on Tesla. And then I want you now have your portfolio and you've spent $10,000 on each, and we're going to track those over the next 72 hours. So what I want to have you guys do at Tesla Fan Insight on Facebook is send me a text, and I want to find out from you to see if you did your homework. How many options did you buy with your $10,000 approximately at the 335 strike price and at the 340 strike price? So you're going to ask a question, which is, how do I find out how much these options are? The answer is, if you have a brokerage account, I want you to actually call the broker and tell them, I want the price right now on a 335 call and a 340 call for November on Tesla, and I want that price, and I want you to write it down, and then I want you to do the division to tell me how many of them did you buy. Why do you want to do this? Because it helps you walk through the process of understanding how to trade. And what I found interesting is it costs you more if you call up the broker to talk with them about the trade versus if you just do it online. But I want you to have the option of doing both, because there could be a lot of money involved, and a recorded conversation about the trade you did beats by a mile doing a trade electronically, which may or may not have gone through, and there could be a lot of money attached to the trade that just went on. So a few footnotes. The final part of the show, as I shared that I'm wanting to do today, is review the 2 books that I'm recommending that you read. One is Talib. It's called The Black Swan. The second book I'd like to order and or read is a book called One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch. As you know, Peter Lynch used to run the Magellan Fund. He's considered one of the best money managers ever, if not the best. And he actually wrote a book called One Up on Wall Street. There's also a book called Beating the Street. It's actually the same book. It might have been a later version or whatever. It doesn't matter which one. The reason I chose One Up on Wall Street is that 60% of all the stock is owned by large institutions like Magellan's Fidelity Fund. And by reading that book, you can anticipate how the fund managers think about fundamental analysis. That way, as you're trying to trade, you can anticipate what they're going to do with their money and how they're going to move the stock. So the next thing I wanted to sort of run you guys through is why I chose Talib. He has something called Black Swan. Black Swan trading is an interesting idea because as you read that book, he'll introduce you to a trading technique where people are putting small amounts of money at risk, anywhere from $20 to $100. And if you happen to hit a Black Swan event, that $20 to $100 could be worth $10, $20, $30,000 in a short period of time. So I consider the Talib a way to sort of walk you through or into the process of trading. And what's going to happen over time is we're going to be reviewing a number of trading situations. So you'll be getting a lot of experience trading based on things that occurred. For example, I talked about that real estate trade today. That was a trade. The instrument was a piece of real estate, but it was still a call options trade that went on there. So I'm going to sort of wind down at this point. Even if you don't have the Talib or the One Up on Wall Street, go on Wiki and read several times what is written about what's in that book there, if possible, and a few of the reviews, because you want to go through the whole book if you want to make a lot of money, but at minimum, you want to have a good sense of what's going on, because I can be moving through other lessons, and then you'll be able to apply all that knowledge in the process without me having to tell you on breaks or questions you might ask. So I'm going to wind down and close out this show right now. For our first session, there's a concept called a call option that we would, there's a call option. We've kind of introduced it to you through the real estate angle, because what you guys didn't realize is you've been trading options if you bought a house. It's just they didn't tell you what you were doing. Number one. Number two, Talib and Peter Lynch's book are awesome. Definitely worth the time to understand. The third thing that I wanted to, so I kind of want to close out here because there's a whole mountain of stuff. Don't forget your homework. 10,000. You got 20,000 in hand. I want you to buy 335 calls at both and $10,000 worth, and I want you to buy 340 calls that expire on November 16th. And your homework is to send me a Facebook message to tell me how many of them you bought. And so I wanted to sort of encourage you down that lane. So I'm closing out here. This is session 1. We'll be getting into session 2 in the next show, likely today, but I may put that show on tomorrow. The next part of our show will get into how running through how options are priced and understanding, sort of breaking out an individual option more intensely so you exactly understand the process of what an option is and how it works will be our next show. And then we can get back into our Tesla discussions. I have to admit that there's a show I want to do right now, and I'm labeling the option shows, but it was just announced that Panasonic lost $65 million while Tesla was making money. And I think it's kind of interesting. The Wall Street Journal just threw that out there, but I think it's a fun discussion of how and why they did that and sort of the impact that's going on. In particular, the impact they're having is the Wall Street Journal is digging for negative stories as a way to slow down the growth of the stock price right now. You guys should be warned that if in fact one more entity announces an upgrade of Tesla, it's going to push the stock up another 5 or 10 points easily. So we're not only tracking the fact that you bought the options today, which I'd like you to do, we're also going to be tracking on a daily basis what's happening to the price of that option is part of what I'm going to be reviewing in this class. So on November 1st, you just purchased $10,000 of the 35 calls, and you just purchased $10,000 of the 340 calls on Tesla. Again, please note that the stock is at 337, so you're purchasing just below the stock price and just above those options. And that's actually called in the money and out of the money options. Anyway, I want to thank you all for joining us. I could see Jerry, thanks for the numerous comments. All of you, I could see all of your other comments that were going on there. I would encourage you to kind of watch this a couple of times, because as I get into the next show, I'm going to be referencing what I covered in this show. and you'll be able to understand things better, and happy to answer questions if you need to, but there'll be fewer questions because you really want to get this in mastery. Once again, thank you again for joining us. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Please remember, I just did my 20 leg lifts on each leg with a 5-pound weight. Want your legs to be strong and lock in those knees. I definitely see a difference for myself. Remember, don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours, so everything can be digested. Also, omega-3 would be a good idea health-wise on a daily basis. Looking forward to our next show. We're definitely going to shoot one tomorrow, but I'm going to try to get in it today because what we covered on options is very little today. I want to get into what I'm really trying to do is get through 4 or 5 shows quickly, because within 2 weeks of the announcement of earnings, there's a lot of movement in the stock. And so if you know what you're doing, you might be able to get in faster and make some funds from that. Can I spell the names of the books? Excellent point. You know, I'll do you one better. What I'll do is, after I'm shooting this video, I'll type the name of the books in the information line on this video so you can see what they are. I'll just do it that way because, you know, there are a bunch of books out there. I'm just recommending those 2, but they're terrific, and I think you guys will find them useful. If you send me a note on Facebook at Tesla Fan Insight, I can send you the names that way as well, but I will go ahead and put them in the bottom of this video right now as we finish. Again, thanks for joining us. I wanted to say Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lahitraot Hebrew, Choda Hafez Farsi, Farvel Dutch. In Jamaica we say "Nuff respect, walk good man." Hopefully some of you guys are learning a little patois in the process. My grandma would have hated it because in Jamaica we want to speak good English, not patois, but it's fun anyway. At any rate, have a great day, and we'll chat, and look forward to your comments. Please remember to like and subscribe. We could use some help on Patreon if you would. Thanks again, and bye for now.